The bright morning sun spilled across the quiet streets of Maple Ridge, making everything look peaceful, but behind the polished windows of one beautiful house, a little girl's entire world was about to be destroyed. 12-year-old Arya stood at the front door with nothing more than a small backpack clutched tightly against her chest. Tears filled her emerald eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had already cried enough after losing her father only 6 months earlier. What hurt even more was watching the woman who had promised to love her forever suddenly look at her as though she were nothing more than an unwanted burden. With one cold decision, her stepmother handed her over to a homeless single father she barely knew, believing she was throwing away the last reminder of her late husband. She smiled as if she had won. What she didn't realize was that the greatest mistake of her entire life had just begun. Before this unforgettable story continues, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes kindness can change lives, and subscribe to Heart of Hope if you believe everyone deserves a second chance. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that inspire millions around the world. Arya had always been known as the sunshine of her neighborhood. She loved painting flowers, feeding birds in the park, and reading adventure books under the giant oak tree in the backyard. Her father, Rowan Mercer, had raised her with endless affection after her mother passed away when she was only a baby. Several years later he married Celine, hoping Arya would once again have the warmth of a complete family. At first everything seemed wonderful. Celine smiled often, bought expensive dresses, and acted like the perfect stepmother whenever people were watching. But behind closed doors, that kindness slowly disappeared. She became distant, impatient, and jealous of the bond between father and daughter. When Rowan unexpectedly died from a sudden heart condition, the only thing standing between Celine and complete control of his luxurious estate was the little girl who carried his heart in her smile. Instead of honoring her husband's memory, Celine focused only on wealth. Lawyers informed her that a large portion of Rowan's fortune had been placed in a trust that belonged entirely to Arya when she reached adulthood. Furious that she could never fully control the inheritance, bitterness consumed her. She stopped calling Arya by sweet names. Meals became smaller. Birthdays were ignored. Every photograph of Rowan disappeared from the walls. The home that once echoed with laughter slowly became colder than winter itself. Across the city lived a man named Elias Hart, a widowed father whose life had collapsed after losing his construction job during an economic downturn. Medical bills from his late wife's illness had taken everything he owned. Despite working whenever temporary jobs appeared, he and his 8-year-old son, Micah, had been forced to sleep in an old shelter and sometimes inside their aging van. Even through unimaginable hardship, Elias remained gentle. He volunteered at soup kitchens whenever he could, always sharing his own meal before eating himself. Many people saw only a homeless man. Very few saw the enormous heart hidden beneath worn-out clothes. One afternoon Celine visited the community center where homeless families often received meals. She had come looking for someone desperate enough to accept responsibility for Arya with almost no questions. She spotted Elias helping elderly volunteers carry heavy food boxes even though he had clearly skipped breakfast himself. She watched quietly before approaching him with fake kindness. She painted a heartbreaking picture, pretending she was too sick and financially ruined to care for her stepdaughter. Elias looked at Arya's frightened face instead of Celine's expensive handbag. Something deep inside him recognized silent pain because he carried plenty of his own. Although he had almost nothing, he agreed to protect the child until proper arrangements could be made. Celine happily signed temporary guardianship papers, convinced she would never have to think about Arya again. The first evening felt painfully awkward. Elias apologized because dinner consisted only of vegetable soup donated by the shelter and homemade bread prepared by volunteers. Arya quietly thanked him and smiled for the first time in weeks. She noticed that Micah willingly broke his own slice of bread in half before offering the larger piece to her. No one had shown her that kind of selflessness since her father died. Something warm began growing inside the tiny family that possessed almost nothing except compassion. Days turned into weeks. Although they still struggled, every sunrise felt lighter than the last. Elias found part-time work repairing fences and painting homes. Aria used her artistic talent to paint colorful murals inside the shelter's children's room, bringing joy to kids who had forgotten how to smile. Local newspapers noticed the beautiful artwork and published photographs. Donations began arriving from strangers inspired by the homeless girl's incredible talent. Volunteers admired how Elias encouraged every child equally instead of seeking attention for himself. Meanwhile, Celine enjoyed expensive vacations and luxurious shopping trips, believing the chapter was permanently closed. She never imagined that Rowan had secretly arranged another legal document before his death. His longtime attorney had been searching for Aria for months after discovering suspicious changes made by Celine. According to Rowan's final wishes, anyone who intentionally abandoned or mistreated Aria would immediately lose every financial benefit connected to his estate. Furthermore, whoever genuinely cared for Aria's well-being would become trustee until she reached adulthood. The lawyer finally located Aria after recognizing her painting in the newspaper article. He arrived at the shelter expecting sadness but instead found children laughing around colorful walls painted with forests, rainbows, and hopeful skies. He watched Elias patiently fixing broken bicycles while Micah and Aria handed out sandwiches to other families. It was impossible to ignore the love surrounding them despite their poverty. After reviewing every detail, the court quickly uncovered Celine's deception. Neighbors testified about neglect. Teachers described Aria arriving hungry and withdrawn before being abandoned. Community workers confirmed Elias had never asked for money and had cared for Aria as though she were his own daughter. The judge's decision shocked everyone in the courtroom. Celine lost access to Rowan's remaining estate because she had violated every promise she made as guardian. Temporary guardianship became permanent foster guardianship under Elias while the trust remained fully protected for Aria's future. News spread quickly throughout Maple Ridge. People who had ignored Elias suddenly saw him differently. A local business owner offered him a permanent maintenance position after hearing his story. Another family donated a small furnished house that had remained empty for years. Volunteers gathered together over one incredible weekend, painting walls, repairing furniture, planting flowers, and transforming the house into a true home. For the first time in many months, Aria had her own bedroom again. It wasn't decorated with expensive furniture like her old room, but every object carried genuine love. Micah proudly built tiny bookshelves from recycled wood. Elias planted Rowan's favorite white roses outside the bedroom window after learning about Aria's father. Every evening the three of them shared dinner around a small wooden table, thanking God not for wealth but for another peaceful day together. As years quietly passed, Aria's paintings became famous across the state. Art galleries displayed her work, each canvas reflecting hope discovered in unexpected places. Instead of painting luxury or perfect lives, she painted ordinary people helping strangers, children comforting one another, and families built through kindness rather than blood. Every exhibition raised money for homeless shelters and struggling families because she never forgot where her second life had truly begun. Celine's life moved in the opposite direction. Friends disappeared once the money vanished. Luxury faded into loneliness. She often drove past the little house filled with flowers, secretly watching the family she once believed was worthless. She expected to see misery. Instead she saw laughter spilling through open windows, neighborhood children filling the yard, and Aria hugging Elias after returning from another successful art exhibition. Regret slowly became heavier than any punishment a court could have given her. One bright spring afternoon, nearly 8 years after that heartbreaking morning, Aria organized the opening of the largest community art center Maple Ridge had ever seen. The building stood on land purchased with earnings from her artwork and donations from supporters worldwide. Above the entrance, a simple message welcomed every visitor: hope begins when someone chooses kindness. Hundreds gathered for the ceremony. Homeless families received free meals. Children painted colorful murals together. Former shelter residents hugged one another with tears in their eyes. Elias stood quietly near the back, uncomfortable with attention, while Micah proudly helped younger children carry paint supplies. During her heartfelt speech, Arya looked toward the man who had once owned nothing except compassion. She explained that the richest person she had ever known had once slept inside an old van because true wealth was never measured by money but by the size of someone's heart. Many people wiped tears from their faces because everyone understood exactly who she meant. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to Heart of Hope. Your support allows these inspiring stories of kindness and hope to reach people who may need them the most. Special request: before the ending, please comment just one word, kindness, if you believe one act of compassion can completely change someone's destiny. As the golden afternoon sunlight covered the art center, Arya quietly visited the small garden behind the building where a white rose bush bloomed beautifully. She placed one of her father's favorite paintings beneath the flowers and whispered a silent thank you. Although Rowan was no longer there to watch her grow, his greatest gift had never been money or property. It had been teaching her that love always finds its way back to those who give it freely. The woman who tried to throw her life away had unknowingly delivered her into the arms of the family she was always meant to find. Sometimes the people who reject us are only pushing us toward the people who will truly cherish us forever. And in the end, the homeless single father everyone overlooked became the greatest blessing that little girl could ever have received, proving that destiny often hides inside the most unexpected acts of kindness, and that hope always blooms brightest in the hearts that refuse to stop loving.